This episode of Future Cities Africa is brought to you in partnership with Open Cities Lab. Visit them at opencitieslab.org.
Findlay is Africa Data Hub project lead at Open Cities Lab. We'll be discussing the newly launched African Data Hub. Before we get into that, welcome Sarah. Give us a brief intro to your role at Open Cities Lab.
I'm the project lead at Africa Data Hub, which is a project run by Open Cities Lab, a civic tech organization that's based in Durban, but is now branched out to Joburg and Cape Town. And they run projects that support data and tech solutions for government and civil society to hold people accountable and to offer better service delivery where it's needed. So the Africa Data Hub is a project that was started in October 2020, and it is a data platform that seeks to make complex, inaccessible data about COVID and COVID-related issues more accessible to journalists and the public and researchers. And it seeks to stimulate data-driven journalism and decision-making across the continent. Because at the moment, there are a lot of data challenges around COVID for Africa. We see that in Europe and America, there's a lot of data available. And on the continent, it's far more difficult to come by.
How do we get individuals to trust the data that they receive from the media and from journalists?
So in the environment that we're currently living in, trust both in the media and in government is at an all-time low. But one of the ways that we can overcome that is providing accuracy and credibility, and by unpacking the sources and the methodology around how that data is collected. If we are clear that this is the reason data is being collected, if we are clear that this is how it was done, why, who it was funded by, that offers a level of trust that audiences can then buy into.
How do we actually get individuals to trust the media? Because sure, the information is correct, but how does the individual know that that information has been sourced correctly?
I worked at a media nonprofit before I worked with OCL. And the two key things that we kept reiterating to newsrooms time and time again was that newsrooms themselves need to make it clear why they are important. You need to tell your audience why journalism is so important. And the big gap has been that newsrooms assume that everybody knows why journalism is important. And that assumption means that, I don't know, people who consume news kind of forget like why this is so critical. I think the Gupta leaks was something that really reminded us, oh, journalism and investigative journalism is a critical part of how we get justice. But in day-to-day news, that is kind of lost. And I think the other thing is around newsrooms need to put more effort into providing consumers of news with critical literacy skills. So you are confronted with a news story, you need to be able to see, okay, there's a headline, I need to be able to identify that this is a credible news institution. Can I access them? Are they part of the press council? Do I have a complaint? Who is there like contact information? All of these things mean that there's accountability. And if audiences don't think that there's accountability, then there's also not another reason to trust them.
So why an African Data Hub? Where did the need for such a platform stem from?
Fundamentally, good and accurate data is essential to decision-making, both on an individual level, but also on a national and international level, where governments, for example, if they have good quality data, they can then direct resources where it's needed. If we understand that there are a particular number of hospital beds and that case numbers are increasing, they can then steer resources and funding to ensure that issue is addressed on the ground. On the other hand, poor data means that decisions are made with inaccurate information, and it means that we don't fully understand the reality of what's happening on the ground. And so good data is essential to us moving forward and to addressing the issues that we're faced with.
What are the major consequences when data is not responsibly sourced and thus reporting on important information is inaccurate?
Trust is a critical element of media and in research and in politics. And if that is missing, we struggle to move forward as a society. And if we can provide data that is incorrectly sourced to something, or the consumer doesn't understand where it's coming from, or the analysis doesn't make sense, then it fails to land with the person that's reading or viewing that content, which means that the shifts or the changes that we hope to see, both with individuals, but also with policymakers and those in higher levels of decision making, those changes won't come about in the ways that we need them to. And around COVID, what's been really helpful is having updates daily to show us these are the case numbers, this is what's happening, this is where the information is coming from. But what's become even more important is that there's also a level of COVID fatigue. And so journalists now need to explore other avenues of helping us understand the importance of COVID and the pandemic and our behavioral changes to it.
What are the key features of the African Data Hub, and what value does it offer journalists and newsrooms?
So there are 3 features on the portal at the moment. And this is our minimum viable product, our MVP. And the idea behind this is that we want this to be user-centered design. We want newsrooms and journalists to engage with the platform so that we can tailor the functionality and the features to suit what they are looking for, the types of data, the types of functionality. And so this is an opportunity for us to get feedback on what we've produced so far. So the 3 features that we have, the first is a data repository. This is just a portal that allows journalists or researchers to access data directly. These are data sets that we have sourced from other institutions that we have vetted and approved, and that we've uploaded, that people can then access and analyze them in their own time, especially if journalists already have a degree of data analysis knowledge. The second thing is that we have a portal that features mapped data. And this is specifically an exploratory tool that's dynamic and interactive, and you can go and view data from across the continent, compare case and death numbers between different countries. In some cases, you can look at a subnational level, see what the differences are in terms of vaccinations. And this is to help provide an easier mechanism of understanding what's happening on the continent. Sometimes looking at dry data, spreadsheets and PDFs doesn't offer the meat or doesn't offer the context that you're looking for. And we're hoping that by visualizing it in this way, it offers a bit more substance to what you can then go and explore further. Our third feature is the vaccine tracker. This is a data set that we have developed ourselves and compiled ourselves from our world in data and WHO data, but also from news stories and press statements. So it's the most accurate data set around vaccinations on the continent, and it specifically disaggregates to a country level the number of vaccinations that have taken place, but also, most importantly, the type of vaccine that's being used. This is the first data set in the world that has done that. So you can see Ethiopia has approved and has used these 3 vaccines. And there might be a story there. Are there connections to government with certain industries, or it's another opportunity to explore financing and funding. And so the vaccine tracker is a really exciting tool that we hope will trigger a lot of story ideas for journalists moving forward.
Apart from journalists and newsrooms, what value does this information offer the public sector and business in Africa?
That's a terrific question. So the portal is live. We have partnered with specific newsrooms to offer tailored support to them, but the portal is freely available and is accessible to anyone with the website link. And the idea behind this is that it's not only important for journalists to be data savvy and to understand COVID and health-related data, but to stimulate across the continent and across industries a level of data savviness. As we move from 2020, 2021, past the pandemic, we see that data is such a critical resource and a critical tool for us to implement change. And so we hope that the way that we present data in these user-friendly formats can also trigger change across other industries around how they approach information and data-driven decision-making.
Apart from data on the pandemic, what other data sets do you see adding value to enable informed decision-making?
So we've listed epidemiological data, but our vision is that we can bolster coverage of the pandemic by offering other data sets and looking at what we're referring to as COVID adjacent data, looking at employment rates and food security. At the moment, we're actually working with a newsroom looking at financial indicators, so inflation forecasts and the impact that the pandemic has had on that. So it's not just looking solely at case numbers, which, as I've said, has become people are fatigued by that kind of information, but actually exploring what COVID has meant for a whole lot of different sectors. So we are currently looking at funding and financing, looking at donations related to COVID and whether there's stories around corruption that exist, but we're moving more and more to exploring other data sets that COVID might have had an impact on.
Who are the key role players involved in making this hub a successful project?
So we have a fantastic team. So Open Cities Lab works in close partnership with another civic tech organization called Open Up, based in Cape Town, and we are the core team that are driving the platform. We then work with 3 other partners, Media Hack based in South Africa, Odipa Dev based in Kenya, and Ara Data Science based in Nigeria. And they are each data visualization and data journalism specialists who then work directly with the newsroom, offering resources, data visualizations, training and support. So we have a kind of networked approach. And the idea is that we will look to expand, hopefully, the number of partners and newsrooms that we work with moving forward. But we have a terrific team who are doing great work.
So what is the vision of the African Data Hub and what needs to happen to achieve its goals and have a real quantifiable impact?
The Africa Data Hub seeks to become the go-to data repository on the continent. At the moment around COVID data and COVID adjacent data, but moving forward to become a health data repository. And we're hoping to expand outside of South Africa, Kenya, and Nigeria to other newsrooms and research organizations across the continent. A key part of that vision is also to enable data-driven storytelling and data-driven journalism. And a key element of this project is around capacity building and training that's offered by our partners to newsrooms and journalists. Because what we understand is that, so while access to data is a key constraint to journalism around COVID, the other constraint is the lack of skills around analyzing, interpreting, filtering, and cleaning data that they can then use in stories that have meaningful impact. So a key kind of thrust of our work is to provide that training and capacity building that will live long after the hub and long after COVID. And the idea with this is that we will also provide the training materials on our portal that is accessible to researchers or interested members of the public, that they can also understand what data journalism is and start refining those data skills that is becoming so essential.
What other options are there for industry to collaborate with the African Data Hub?
At the moment, a key part of our work is around accessing data sets, trying to find data sets that are relevant to journalists and the public. And so if you as a business owner or part of a specific industry have data sets that you think will be helpful and valuable to us, or that you'd like to showcase and be used on the platform, please get in touch with us. At the moment, we have some terrific data use agreements with certain institutions, including the Africa Center for Disease Control, but we'd love to get information and insights and resources from any other partners that are interested in collaboration.
Finally, where can people get in touch with you? We'll also be adding this information on the futurecitiesafrica.com website under episode 51.
So you can access the website at www.africadatahub.org. We are also on social media. If you search for Africa Data Hub on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and we're slowly starting to put out resources and posts sharing what the Africa Data Hub is about. And you can also contact us at info@africadatahub.org.